Good morning, people, and welcome to Your Morning Cup with Chuck, where I help you get inspired, educated, and motivated to a point where all you think is positive thoughts, baby, and positive thoughts create positive action. Welcome to the First Cupkc. This podcast is powered by Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Today, we have a life coach, trainer, writer, speaker, and community leader with us today. Her name is Skye Wagner. Welcome, Skye.
Thank you for having me.
How are you? How you been?
Good. Been really good.
So, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Skye. I am 31 years old. I grew up in Phoenix. I've lived in a few different places. I'm here in Kansas City with my partner, Alan. And I've been coaching pretty much since I finished school.
Really?
So, it's been something, and in between here and there were other things I also did.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been something I've been doing for all of my adult life pretty much.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Phoenix, Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Why Kansas?
Because
you see what's going on outside.
I do see what's going on with the snow. I even had to learn how to drive in the snow. Alan sat in the passenger seat and gave me when you're a teenager and you have a permit, it was like that for driving in the snow. But I lived in Los Angeles for a while because of a previous relationship, and I also lived in Florida for 6 months or so. I came out here to be with Alan, and I do like it. I love the 4 seasons. I've never experienced that because Phoenix and LA and Florida, they don't really have that. So right now I'm really enamored with the snow, but what I'm being told and what I'm sure is probably true is that this time next year, I won't like it so much, but yeah, I think it's fun right now. So,
any close calls?
Any close calls while driving, you mean?
Yes, because this is different.
Nothing as bad as I thought it would be, but I also don't drive a ton in these times. I try to do a lot of virtual stuff,
right.
But there was one time that was my first official time driving in the snow where I was pulling out of a plaza, a shopping plaza, and my brakes just didn't go, the light turned red and I didn't fully stop when I needed to. So I was kind of in the intersection when the cars were coming this way, but they went around me.
Right.
And so I was sitting at that red light being okay, please turn green as soon as possible. Yeah.
What is the Lions team, and how did Skye Wagner get into coaching?
Okay, so the Lion Team is a community of just like-minded, positive people who are interested in growth and positivity, but in terms of authentic positivity, not just hey, let's be fluffy all the time,
right? But
more hey, let's be positive. Let's talk about positive things and wins, but let's also talk about struggles. And if anyone needs any help, this is a community that you can go to, because sometimes you'll have people who are maybe the one positive growth mindset kind of person in their family or in their household or in their job, and they feel a little bit isolated. And so the community provides just a community for that. In the Facebook group, there's about 5,000 members of the Lion Team, and that's all over the world. There's people all over the world in there, but it is largely based in Kansas City, and we've had a lot of in-person events in Kansas City, and that will have anywhere between 15 and 100 people, depending on what the event is. Right. So we've done different connect nights. We have a small business networking group. We're having an event called Get Empowered, and we have those a couple times a year. And it's just a lot of what can we do to just get people to be more themselves. And that's something that Alan and I do together. And it's really just a community thing. And from that is where we have we have a coaches academy. We also have a speakers academy. I do most of the coaching stuff, and Alan does all of the speaker stuff pretty much. But how I got into coaching. So, growing up, I kind of struggled a little bit with what do I want to do with my life? Right. And all I really knew was that I wanted to make a difference and make an impact. And, I felt like I had a really good reality as well on, just the harder things in life and how everything's not necessarily a walk in the park. And I turned out, a lot of coaches will say this, but you're often the person that your friends come to for advice a lot.
Yes.
And so I was kind of like that. And I first started coaching with different like nonprofit organizations and churches and stuff like that. And I got all of my training pretty much on the job. And I never looked back. And so I've done a lot of coaching in terms of helping people with immediate stress or trauma. I've done coaching like with employees of a company.
Right.
And just working with the employees and being like, okay, what's your day-to-day stress? Like, oh, wow, there's something personal happening in your life that's affecting you on the job. Let's sort you out so that you can function while we're being real about what life is, you know? And I've always just gotten so much out of really being able to find that spark in a person and bring it out of them and get them to see it themselves.
Right. So you bring the inside lights. So how can someone actually reach out and contact and get involved with the Lions team?
The Lion Team. So on Facebook, there's a group. It's the Lion Team. If you go to facebook.com/the Lion Team official, you'll find it. And there's also an Instagram, the Lion Team official, for people if you're not on Facebook or whatever. And then if you don't have either, on LinkedIn, and if you reach out to me, then I've connected a couple people specifically from LinkedIn to the Lion Team and had them come to some of our events and stuff like that.
And where do you guys normally meet?
We were meeting at a business club where we were using their space in Overland Park. Right now, the business networking happens at a coffee shop, Homer's Coffee Shop, actually.
On Metcalf?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Though that is every Monday at 9 a.m. And then we are going to our general Connect nights, we were doing them weekly. We're going to be starting them again. We're going to have those be virtual now. So people from all over the world.
You can get more people.
Can join in. So
that's awesome. It's funny you say Homer's and the reason why I know which Homer's you're talking about is because that's where I used to meet my mentor. Whenever we met at that Homer's. So that's pretty neat. What made you decide to focus on self-love and self-expression?
It was very personal for me. I have seen like the connection between self-love and self-expression. And it's like, I work with more women than men, and I focus mostly on women, but I do work with male clients as well. And I've just found that so many people live up to so many different expectations, whether it's like the spouse, the kids, the parents, the religion, the community, the job, the other friends, whatever. So there's the actual expectations that are placed on the person, but then there's also the person's own interpretation of those expectations. And a lot of people get themselves caught in this trap where they're living to try to be, I'm supposed to be like this, or I'm supposed to be like this, and what I'm supposed to do for fun is this, that they totally lose sight of themselves.
Right.
And I found that it's an easy thing to overlook because it's become so normalized. And on the outside, everything looks like it's supposed to. But on the inside, they're often kind of falling apart. And so I just feel really passionate about it because I've lived that. I've totally been there. And I love helping people find what they can love about themselves and what is that unique, beautiful thing about themselves.
Yeah.
And how can they express it? What is it going to be? Are they an introvert? How do introverts express themselves? Okay, let's work on that. Like what would be, maybe they express themselves in just the things that they wear or what they post, or if they're more extroverted, it'd be obviously, speaking and videos and whatever is the thing. But I found that amongst my clients, sometimes there's like a bunch of common denominators, but everyone has their own different story and their own personality and their own things that light them up and their own ways they like to express themselves. And I just don't think it's really talked about enough.
It's not enough. It's kind of like mental health. No one really talks about that. But my next question is, you say you work with adults. Do you work with any children?
I haven't worked with a lot of children. I've worked with some, but it kind of just depends on the nature of the situation. I don't have a personal problem working with children, but what often happens is the parent is like, hey, I need you to fix my kid. And the kid's like, I'm going to rebel against what my parents say. Yeah. And if it's like that, then it never really goes anywhere because they're not there for themselves.
Right. They become automatically defensive, and you can't never break through that, especially children. Well, you can break through them, but it's hard.
Yeah.
So on social media, we have several friends that we are in mutual contact with. Nicole, Kenya Master, and Johnny Avocado. That's just strange.
Yeah.
That's just strange because for me to fill this interview with more questions, I kind of like surf around and see if I can gather information outside of normal questions. And I came across the Facebook page, and first thing pops up is all three names. Well, two of those people have been guests on the show. I think John was on the show the second episode, and Nakona was on the show just, maybe 3 or 4 shows ago. That's pretty awkward. It's like weird that, how do you know each one of those people? How do you know, how do you know Nakona? Cause she's...
I would say honestly, for all three of them, you probably know them better than I do. They're all on the Lion team.
Okay.
And so I know them through mutual friends. I haven't actually met any of them in person.
Okay.
But I've talked with them distant wise, and with John specifically, he's been recently to a couple of our networking groups, and he expressed interest in becoming a coach and becoming a speaker and wanting to connect specifically with Alan. And so I had like a short, brief conversation with him about that. But then otherwise it's been like, we're all kind of in a similar way.
Kind of like us on LinkedIn. We're there. We participate with each other. It goes in and out, but we really just don't have that personal connection.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. And I would also say that I feel like all of us, like yourself included, and people that I connect with like that, it's because we're all kind of like in the same boat of like, we see things a little bit differently than what everybody tells us. Right. And we want to see the world be a better place.
Man, that's me all day. That's me. Johnny. So he has this critical skills, critical thinking class that, well, it's not really a class, it's a meeting. And it's like the meeting of the brains. He does this thing the 4th Wednesday of every month, and he does it at Parlor. Sometimes he does it in more exclusive places, but most of the time he does them at Parlor. Have you ever been to any of? You should come.
It sounds like something I should definitely check out.
Yeah. So sometimes we get a lot of people there. Sometimes not so many. But to me, sometimes when it's not so many, you get more involvement. You get a little deeper. And this guy, he's a good speaker. I've told him a lot. Lately, I've always told him, man, you got to get in front of people. You got to get out there. You got to let people see you. You have a strong voice, great mind, fast thinker. Me, I kind of tend to stutter. And crazy thing about it, I took a Toastmasters class. I don't know if you know what that is, but I took a Toastmasters class and got my ATM in it, but it was years ago. He's a great speaker. And his classes that he have, they're very, very beneficial. I get a lot out of them. And I also get to put in a little of my own input. And sometimes, man, you learn a lot better when you're learning from each other. So I would definitely suggest you come out to one of the meetings. But he has those meetings the 4th Wednesday of every month. And they're between 6:30 and 8 o'clock. Sometimes they go over a little bit. But anyone out there that's looking to use your mind and think a little more critical, come down to the Parlor. It's at 1707 Locust Street in KC Mo. I'll be there the next session. So one session was just last night. So the next one will be next month. And I think it's like at the end of the month or whatever, but I'll be there. So definitely be there. I missed this last one because I had a meeting, but so does being a speaker require a special class or course?
I wouldn't say it requires it necessarily, but it
did you take any classes?
I did. I actually did Alan's Speakers Academy. So when Alan, my boyfriend and partner, I
was about to ask that.
He is he's done a TED Talk. He has, his whole incredible story of being a speaker, and he's a very like fill up the room, charismatic speaker, and he just has a passion for it. And so he launched a speakers academy where he teaches how to land a TED Talk, how to make an impact with speaking, how to expand your business with speaking, and also how to land paid speaking gigs. That's what he does. And the first one that he did, I helped kind of staff it, but I also took it as a participant. And I had done actually some public speaking before that, but what I learned and what I was able to do and practice and stuff in doing that made it so that I can say, oh, I am a speaker. Like none of my, social media bios, none of anything I would ever tell people, I would never say I'm a speaker until after I finished that class and I actually had the confidence to do that. And I know now how to actually put together events, what's needed for different speeches, and I just feel like so much more confident. And so I would say that definitely helps. But of course, nothing's like technically required to be a speaker, but I think
need a license.
Right, but it makes like a huge difference.
So your first time speaking, were you nervous? Were you scared?
My first time speaking. So it's interesting because I have a couple of different times that felt like my first time speaking. And I would say for me, stage fright has always been a thing. I took a theater class in high school for the purpose of specifically getting over stage fright. And I still honestly get a wave of nervousness every single time. The first time I ever did a really, really big speech, honestly, was when I was in high school. I was a junior, and we were supposed to pick controversial topics that not a lot of people talk about.
Right.
So I did a speech about the mental health industry and the abuses that sometimes happen within like the pharmaceutical companies and within the walls, just because I have actual family members who've been victims of this. And so something I personally felt really strong about. And the whole day leading up to the speech, I could not think about anything else. I don't remember what happened that day, and I was probably not paying attention to anything because I was so nervous. And when I went to give the speech, I gave some personal stories about my family members that had been affected and not properly taken care of. And I uncontrollably started crying in the middle of the speech. And that made a huge emotional impact on the speech. So it turned out to like work in my favor, but it was a little bit rough because I couldn't make it stop. And so I was like, okay, all right, let's just keep rolling, So that happened. And then since then, I've delivered seminars and workshops, but that feels different than giving a speech. And I would say the next time that I felt like was my first time was at a Get Empowered event that we did with the Lion team last June. I was the opener of the show, and I didn't really know that I was going to be opening it until that morning or like the day
Probably
before.
Helped you out.
Yeah, and I introduced Alan and everything like that. And I was like, wait, these people actually bought tickets to come here, and I'm going to be the first one they talk to or they hear, like, that they listen to, and I was so nervous. I was like, okay, I'm just going to have to roll with it and pretend that I'm not nervous. And after I got up there and started to roll, then the nervousness
just faded away.
And I started to learn to just embrace that, because I found that the more I would be like, oh, I shouldn't be nervous. It's not good to be nervous. Don't let anyone see that I'm nervous. The worse it kind of got. So now I just have small waves of it, and I'm like, okay, cool. I'm experiencing nervousness. Let's go. And then it goes away.
Right. So I was a hip hop artist. I used to record music. I used to perform on stage. Like I was telling you earlier, I took that Toastmaster class. I'm a big talker. So you would think you would get on stage, or you would get in front of the camera and the microphone, and you would be just awesome. Well, my first episode of the First Cupkc, I had a nervous breakdown, pretty much. So John Mester, Johnny Avocado, and my first guest, they had to literally, first time doing what I was first time doing, they literally had to help me through those 2 episodes that we recorded. So it was, you just think, that just because you might even have all that experience, the classes, sometimes it can easily fail you if you lose control, So you are also a community leader.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because there was never a point in time where I was like, I'm going to be a community leader. It kind of just naturally, organically occurred. Like I had been a part of the Lion team. Alan started it, but then we've grown it together. So like when I first became a part of the Lion team, there were around 1,000 members, and we've grown it since then. And, I was kind of always just that extra, like that over contributing member. And that's how I found myself in a lot of groups that I belong to. I tend to just do a lot. And I used to have this attitude of like, whether I want to do it or not, no one else is doing whatever this thing is, and it needs to be done, so I'll step up. And so
I like that.
So that's always kind of been, now I embrace it more. I used to do it in sort of like a begrudging way of like, okay, I don't really want to have to do this, but no one else is, so whatever. But now I'm like, okay, no. The reason why no one else is not doing this is because I'm meant to be doing this.
Exactly.
And so then, what's really cool about Alan and I, we found this in our relationship and also in the business dynamic. He's strong where I'm weak and vice versa. So I'm pretty good at, engaging with people, nurturing, and also a lot of like logistics and organization. And he's good at like the burst and the growth and that kind of thing. And so I do a lot of I was finding myself doing a lot of like the behind the scenes things and like those little detailed things that kind of is the glue that holds everything together. That comes pretty naturally for me. And I just also am so passionate about it. I love communities. I love connection. I think human relationships are so important, especially during these times. I think it's become very apparent to people how important human relationships are, but like authentic ones,
Right.
and where you can really be yourself and another person can be themselves and you're empowered just from that interpersonal relationship. And so it honestly came from like doing a little extra because of, just being responsible, but then also just doing something that I loved. And it was like, okay, cool. And I'm just me. And sometimes it's interesting because so I lived in Florida for a little bit while Alan and I were together. So it was like this long distance relationship, but he would post a lot about it. And when I moved to Kansas City, there was a welcome to Kansas City party thrown for me, and he was talking about it. So there were all of these people from the Lion team that only knew me online. And they were so excited to meet me in person. And I kind of felt like a celebrity, which was a little bit funny for me because I'm just me, And so I was like, wow, I'm being treated like I'm a big deal, but I'm kind of just doing my thing.
Hey. And that's what we all do.
Yeah.
You never expect to be this person, and you are. People look at you totally different. Crazy thing about it is every single person looks at you normally different than what you look at yourself. So when you're looking at yourself like you're just plain old me, running around doing all of this stuff that no one else wants to do, everyone else is looking at you like, golly, I'm so glad we have somebody like that running around doing all the stuff that I don't want to do. So, but this question right here, this next question is off topic.
Okay.
And it's off topic because to me, you guys seem like a power couple. And to me, I like to believe me and my wife are power couples because, like you said, where I lack, she's strong, and where she lacks, I'm strong. And when you have that combination, it's kind of like a no-fail. So you go through ups and downs, of course, but you always push forward and you go from this level to this level to this level, and you never stop going. And it's because you guys have found a chemistry that works. How do you guys keep that energy from working with each other? How do you guys make that work? And I know you said he's weak where you're strong and you're weak where he's strong, but people don't think that people always say, oh, that's impossible. How do you work I would never work with my girl, or I will never work with my man. And it's like, man, honestly, it's probably the best thing you could possibly be able to do is work with it. Well, we need that time apart. Well, you'll always be able to get that time apart, but how do you guys make it work?
It's a really good question. So it's interesting because we've gone through a lot of different kinks on this, and we've been working together for a while, but we both used to do everything. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until recently where it's like, well, let's do what the other one is good at, and we organize it differently, and that works really well. And so I would say for one thing, we are both, we really have a lot of very strong, honest communication, and we'll both have those like harder to have conversations. Like we have a lot of those. And it's like, okay, what's the area of growth? What are we running into? what's the trigger that's happening here? Let's actually talk this out and resolve it. And, we're going for resolving it so that we move forward. But of course, we're realistic. If it comes up again, it comes up again.
Right. Just deal with it.
We both are really good at holding each other accountable as well to certain things. And so, but I think it's really good because we just have like, as a basic foundational information about our relationship, it's like, good, we're together, we're in this, we're growing together, whatever else happens, we'll work through it. And so having that as a basis, I think, is super important. Having those conversations that are tough to have is super important. And what's really, really cool about Alan is that he prioritizes state of being over everything. So he's like, does this bring you joy? How do you feel energy-wise when you do certain things? That's like the most important thing. And that's kind of how we figured out that we were strong in each other's weaknesses.
Right.
It's like, what do you feel good doing? Okay, cool. So there's that. But yeah, the communication is huge, but then also it helps because then we're not literally both trying to do the same thing as each other. And I think that's where a lot of couples will butt heads. Like, they're both trying to be the same role. And then you get into weird, whatever, or you're stepping on the person's toes or the other person feels invalidated or whatever. And so I think we're really fortunate in that. But the communication and the constant communication and the complete open honesty is super important. And then we do have also like our relationship in itself is really, really strong, but we do have a certain time where it's like, okay, cool, we're actually not working anymore. We're being a couple right now. We're just hanging out,
and
or whatever. And it's important to have that, I would say. And then we do have time apart, sometimes there'll be like entire days where it's like we're both kind of doing our own thing. And I think that's just as important.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. So I know you've been through obstacles. You want to talk about a couple of them?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I've definitely been through some. So I was adopted as a baby, and so I grew up with my adopted family. And so my adopted family, they're extremely loving. Like, I love them so much. They did everything they possibly could to make me feel welcome, but they don't look like me at all. Right. I am half black and half white. My entire adopted family is white, which is a thing. So it was difficult growing up being like, wow, I look different, especially as a woman and as a girl, and like, going to primarily white schools and everything like that, and trying to just make myself be different was really uncomfortable. And also just having to explain to all my friends all the time, or teachers before parent-teacher conferences, like, okay, let me tell you this whole backstory of my family, just so that you don't get all weird and you don't think these people are imposters. They are my parents. And also, it was my dad and stepmom. So my adopted parents divorced and remarried also when I was 3. So I've always had like split households and all of that. But what's interesting, and the reason why even in my own coaching I focus on the expectations and people's response to the expectations, is because my whole life I felt like I was trying to live up to an expectation. As I'm close to the youngest in my line of cousins and stuff like that, and being adopted and being different, I draw a lot of attention to myself. So there was always like this stigma around me. And I sort of felt like, okay, I have to earn that attention. Like, I have to give them a reason to care so much about me. So I made myself into this crazy perfectionist. I was super hard on myself, even as a kid. And I was afraid to pursue my passion sometimes, even because I was so worried that like, oh, well, my sister doesn't do that, and so let me try to do it if my sister does. And what's crazy is like most of my family doesn't even know I ever thought that way. They never said I needed to do that. It was literally all just in my own head. It's all in your head. And that honestly makes it even tougher, in my opinion, because I have to be fully responsible for what I put myself through. And getting over that and seeing that and having a lot of the breakthroughs that I've had, I'm like, okay, cool. It's really insidious. It really sneaks in there, and it's very subconscious, but it was very real for me. And I would say that was probably the biggest obstacle, like overriding my whole life. There's so many other ones, but just getting over the fact that I was trying so hard to fit in. I was holding myself up to these expectations that I thought everyone had. And then realizing that that was all me, and being fully responsible for that was like, that was pretty huge,
Yeah, I get it, man. I get it. What inspires you?
What inspires me?
Yes.
Okay, really good movies. Definitely a movie person. I love listening to music. I listen to literally every genre of music, except I don't really do like heavy metal, but pretty much anything else. And then also I've recently been getting really into biographies of successful people, especially artistic women. I listened to the biography recently of Coco Chanel, which was fascinating. I watched the Frida Kahlo movie over the weekend and just, hearing real life stories, like the tough stuff and how people overcame it and seeing like what actually happened in people's lives for me is just so inspiring.
Coco Chanel. She said Coco Chanel. So me personally, I don't watch TV. I do social media a little bit because of course we like to push our passions. I like autobiographies. I like memoirs. Anything that's got to do with a person overcoming something in their life and coming from nothing and becoming something great. I'm trying to figure out how they did it. I came through some crazy stuff too, and we'll be here all day going over the stuff. A lot of people look at me crazy right now because I'm just like so different, but I definitely love audio books. I read a ton of them, and Coco Chanel, I was reading the other day. I've read the book many, many, many times. I'm trying to remember. I read so many of them. I think it was in the Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene, where they was talking. That book is awesome. I would check it out. Definitely check it out.
Yeah, that sounds like a good one. The one I listened to, it's called The Gospel According to Coco Chanel.
The Gospel According to Coco Chanel.
Yeah, that was really interesting.
I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
Is it on audio?
Yeah.
See, I love, you can do so much and you can listen. It's just like podcasting.
Yeah.
You can actually listen. Some people watch it on YouTube. A lot of people I know, they listen to the podcast on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever. What can you tell our viewers that can maybe help them get motivated to do the things that you were unmotivated to do until you figured it out?
Okay, well, a couple things come to mind. One thing is I firmly believe that if a person feels really passionate about a certain thing, that has something to do with their purpose in life, whether it's their literal career or job or just what they do in life and how they serve the world. And so I think it's super important to validate yourself for any passion that you have and follow the passion no matter what anybody says, because truthfully, God gave you that passion.
Yep.
Because God gave you that purpose and that's your role and that's how you find your role in the world. The other thing I would say is that everybody is weird. So
what are you saying? You're saying I'm weird?
Yeah, and I'm weird.
Yeah,
and
we're weird.
Everyone is weird. Everyone is weird.
I'm
Because there's
definitely
like all
weird.
these things that make people really different.
Right.
And sometimes people will try to like mitigate those things in order to fit in with everyone else. And that's just taking away their unique beauty.
Yes.
And so if anyone listening is out there feeling like, okay, well, you're super cool and I'm not a cool person because I'm really weird. It's like, well, actually embrace those things. Yeah. You're unique and just like actually rock it. That's what I would say.
Everyone has a beautiful story. Everyone has a weird story. Everyone has a crazy story. We also have sad stories. We all have many stories, but we are all unique in those stories. So, last question. Are there any words of encouragement that Skye Wagner can tell the viewers?
I feel like there's so many things I could say and so many things that, I would just say words of encouragement is just truly know that you are loved, you are worthy, you are beautiful just as you are. And that's what I would say. Just always know that as a rock bottom basic.
You are worthy. You are. Skye Wagner, you are worthy.
Thank you.
So I'm going to come out and check out one of your classes out there. So when is the next?
So we're having a Get Empowered event on March 4th. I don't know if this will be like soon enough for people to hear it because it's literally next Friday.
No, it'll be aired Saturday morning at 10.
Oh, okay, yeah. So March 4th at the doors open at 5 p.m. It's at a place called Serendipity Labs, which is in Overland Park. It's
Serendipity, I love it.
It's on on 110th and Null.
110th and all.
Yeah.
And the time again?
The doors open at 5. The event will start a little bit after that, but we just
Mingle and
5. Yeah.
So anyone can come out and check it out. It's next Friday, not this Friday. Well,
this airs on Saturday. It'll be like the next Friday. It's on March 4th.
Okay, so on March 4th, come out and check it out. I'll be there. I'm going to come check it out.
And then we have our smaller networking group that meets for anyone who has a business or is interested in networking every Monday morning at 9 a.m. at Homer's.
9 a.m. at Homer's, and I know exactly where that is. So, Skye, thank you so much for coming out and spending some time and letting our viewers know about who you are. Do you offer any coaching classes, coaching courses? How can the viewers get in contact with you?
Okay, so if they go to any of my social media on, LinkedIn, I'm Skye Wagner. Facebook, I'm Skye Wagner. Instagram is SkyeNoel90. Or if you go to SkyeNoel.com, you'll see all of my links to just book the various types of sessions with me.
Kind of like a link tree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you have it, guys. Thank you all for, again, spending another Saturday morning with us. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. And until then, stay positive, people.